You're all set.
I should wait for that little announcement. Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call the Bridgewater Town Council meeting to order. It's Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. It's 7 o'clock in the evening. I'd like to first rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of the
America,
United States of America,
which
to the
stands
republic,
one nation under God,
one
indivisible,
nation,
with liberty, and justice for all.
indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Okay, we do have a couple of condolences this evening on behalf of the town council to the family of Frederick Giovanni upon his passing on February 11th, 2022. Mr. Giovanni served in the United States Navy during the Vietnam War. On behalf of the council to the family of Mr. Robert E. Doyle upon his passing on March 7th, 2022. Mr. Doyle served with combat engagements in the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, 3rd Marine Division of the United States Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. Now I'd like to take a moment of silence to recognize all those veterans and first responders who have passed. Okay, as a reminder, our meeting tonight is being aired live and recorded pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting of the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater will be fully remote and accessible to the public through remote participation to the greatest extent possible. There will be no in-person attendance permitted. Citizens who wish to tune into the meeting may do so via Zoom or Facebook Live. Moving on to our first item on our agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from our previous meeting on March 1st, 2022. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George? Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Rushton?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
And Mr. Columbotus. He's coming in now. So it's 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, item B, announcements from the president. I do have two brief announcements. First, I want to announce that there will be a special meeting of the Town Council to be held on March 18th, 2022 at 4 o'clock. My other announcement is just to remind members of the council and public that we plan on returning to council chambers in person in our first meeting in April. Moving on to proclamations, we have none this evening. Moving on to citizens open forum. Do we have any citizens wishing to speak during citizens open forum? I see Mr. Sam Baumgarten. Name and street, please.
Hi, Sam Baumgarten, 60 Short Street. I just want to make a brief statement about the email that I sent to all the counselors and Mr. Dutton and Ms. Williams a few days ago about the Fair Share Amendment, which will be on the ballot this fall. And just for those people on the call who may not be familiar with it, the Fair Share Amendment is a proposal to amend the Massachusetts Constitution, creating an additional tax of 4 percentage points on the portion of a person's annual income above 1 million. And that new revenue, which is estimated to be about $2 billion a year, would be spent on public education, affordable public colleges and universities, and the repair and maintenance of roads, bridges, and public transportation. It seems like a win for everybody to bring in some extra tax dollars. I don't know what your, somebody's got background noise.
Figure that out.
No.
I apologize. Go ahead, Mr. Baumgarten.
I don't know what your policies and protocols are for dealing with such legislative initiatives, but I would hope that you could debate it and perhaps ultimately support it as a council. The Fair Share Amendment is looking, the people who are supporting it, Raise Up Massachusetts and the Coalition for Social Justice, are looking for support from town groups like councils and school committees. So again, I'm not sure what your protocols and policies are on doing such a thing, but I hope that you could debate it, support it, and I'd be happy to come to such a meeting and add to the discussion. So thank you for your consideration of that.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you.
Do we have any other citizens for citizens open forum?
Janet's iPad.
Okay. Janet,
Good evening, David Hanson, 665 Pleasant Street. And I'm just commenting on the raw milk issue. And I'm in favor of it. There's been a lot of research that is going on with milk these days as far as the protein and milk safety. And I think that those can all be addressed under the right conditions in this day and age.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Could I just ask, David, are you with Hanson Farm on Route 104?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I'm one of the owners.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. Do we have any other citizens for citizens open forum?
Mark laptop.
Mark
Hi,
Laptop.
Mark Peterson, 43 Church Street. I just want to bring up that the open meeting laws, I think, are extended to July of 2022. So I just want to bring that up.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens for citizens open forum?
I do not see any other hands up.
Okay. Moving on to appointments. We have none this evening. Moving on to hearings. First hearing. I'll go ahead and open that. It is 7:08. We have a public hearing order 0 FY 22-038. Capital Plan Fall 2022. At the Budget and Finance Committee, they voted 3-0 to recommend at their 1/24/22 meeting. The FinCom voted 4-2 to approve at their meeting on 1/12/22. Just defer to the town manager. Any additional information? Assistant Town Manager, I apologize, Ms. Kimberly Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, for the public's consumption, our capital improvement plan is our attempt to have a logical, comprehensive, and transparent kind of capital outlay strategy that addresses the town's infrastructure needs. It represents the Bridgewater Raynham Schools district's priorities, supports town operations, its services and programs, and exemplifies our financial best practices. The capital plan submitted today has 40 items on it that fall into about 7 different categories, including our information technology, town buildings and property, property acquisition, vehicles and equipment, public safety apparatus, public schools, and election equipment. As stated, the town's financial committee and budget and finance committee have reviewed these and have given affirmative endorsement of this capital plan. And I have with me our finance director, Tony Salmonte, who is available to answer questions should you have them.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any general questions from the public? Any general questions from the public?
Mark laptop still has his hand up. I'm not sure if it's still up or if he has questions for
that.
this one.
Sorry about that.
Okay,
The hand is now down.
okay.
Thank you. I don't see any general questions from the public. I'm going to ask if there anybody from the public speaking in favor. Anybody from the public wants to speak in favor? See it none. Anyone from the public speaking in opposition? Seeing none, I'm going to move to ask if there are any questions from any of the town councilors. At this point, I expect none. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing. It is 7:10. Entertain a motion to approve.
So move to approve. Yep.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, I'll move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you. Moving on, license transactions. We have several.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I think we're a little early. I'd like to make a motion to take item H out of order.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do that. Do we have a second?
Second.
And do we need a roll call vote?
Yes.
I would assume. Okay, move for a roll call vote. Take item H out of order.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
and Mr. George.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to take item I out of order.
Okay, we have a second.
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 Okay, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood, and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Since I don't see anything under town manager's report, I'd like to make a motion to take item J out of order.
We have a second.
Second.
Point of information, since we have the assistant town manager, does she have anything to add in place of the town manager?
There's nothing on the agenda.
There's
There's
also-
nothing on the agenda,
Yeah, there's nothing on the current agenda.
Okay.
so moving on.
Okay, we're at J, discussions. We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza, Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
and Mr. George.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you. We're 7:14. Anyone else?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to take item K out of order.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Are there any committees that would like to provide a report? Okay, seeing none, I'll move back to license transactions. First item is item A. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for petition P 2022-014, granting of the transfer of a Class 2 used auto dealer's license. Almanzar Auto Sales. Go ahead and refer to the town manager and then to the petitioner if they have anything to present. I apologize, Assistant Town Manager, and then to the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Almazar Auto Sales having submitted this transfer of license on the property that was formerly occupied by Murphy's Auto Sales, 560 Bedford Street. The petitioner has met all requirements for issuance of this license. All town departments, records of town departments have reviewed the submission materials, including the Treasury Office, which has confirmed there are no outstanding taxes owed. We respectfully request that you consider and approve this grant of license.
Excellent, thank you. Is the petitioner here and wishes to speak?
Yes, my name is Ernesto Almanzar. I am here.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Well, what would you like to know?
Really, you can just speak on behalf of your petition for the license. You don't have to say anything, but if you wanted to say something about the business in support of the license, you're free to do so.
Okay, well, we just asked that the transfer request go through. We're not looking to change anything as far as business hours or the business model that's there. Actually, one of the gentlemen will be staying on board. 30 cars is what we're looking for, which I believe the existing license at that location is for 30 vehicles. And we're looking to just carry on what is currently existing.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Moving on, are there any general questions from the public? I do not see any. Is there anyone from the public speaking in favor? Not hear anything. Is there anyone from the public speaking in opposition? Do not see or hear anything. Are there any questions from any members of the council? Do not see anything. We'll go ahead and close the hearing. It is 7:17 and entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve, Mr. President.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
and Mr. George.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Excellent. Good luck. Thank you very much on behalf of the council.
Thank you very much.
Anyone
Mr.
want to take
President?
item C out of order?
Actually, I was going to do item M out of order. I was going to propose to take item M out of order.
I'm fine with that. We have a second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote, taking item M out of order.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes if someone wanted to entertain item C under license transactions.
I will, so moved.
Okay, do we have a
Second.
second? Okay, move for a roll call vote.
Yes.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr.
Even
Perry,
myself.
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, item C, petition P 2022-016, granting of a transfer of a common vehicular license to LC Burger Lounge, doing business as Chessman's Pizza. I'll defer to the assistant town manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, as stated, this is a transfer of license at the property at 16 Central Square. Continuing this similar business operation, there are no changes in the hours. The petitioner has met all requirements for issuance of this license. All town departments have reviewed the submission, including the health department, and the Treasury Office has confirmed that there are no outstanding taxes owed. We respectfully request that this matter be considered and approved.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
second,
Second. Yep.
Any discussion or questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza, Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood, and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
It's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on to item B, I'm going to go ahead and open a public hearing at 7:21 on petition P 2022-015, granting of the transfer of a Class 2 used auto dealer's license to Elite Motors Corp. I'll defer to the town manager, assistant town manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Elite Motor Corp has submitted this transfer of license request for the property, for the location at 456 Bedford Street for your consideration. This is business location, has Cycle Pros on it. This Cycle Pros will be on the left side of the property and this business will be going to the right. The petitioner has met all of the requirements for issuance of the license. All requisite departments have reviewed the submissions and approved their application, including our Treasury office, which has confirmed there are no outstanding taxes due. We respectfully request that you consider and approve this grant of license.
Excellent, thank you. Is the petitioner here and does the petitioner wish to speak?
Hello, I'm Israel. What would you like me to tell about?
Israel, if you want, you don't have to speak. If you want to just generally talk about the business that you're proposing at that site, and that would be fine.
Yes, I actually own a car dealership in city of Marlborough. I am in the business for a while. I know what I'm doing. I know what's the right way of running business, properly organized, nice, clean, keeping everything how it's supposed to be. I'm in general organized person. So already I spoke with my landlord. They kind of know. So I have a good hope to make a good business and, do great job. So now I know what's my limit in there. I know what's my lines, my spot, my size, everything else. So I'm kind of excited to make a great job.
Excellent, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Are there any general questions from the public? Do not see or hear any. Is anyone from the public here speaking in favor? Do not see or hear anyone. Is anyone from the public speaking in opposition? Do not see or hear anyone. Are there any questions from any members of the council? Not seeing or hearing anything. I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing. It is 7:24 p.m. and entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second,
Move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
and Mr. George.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. On behalf of the council, congratulations and good luck, Israel.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Okay, moving on, legislation for action. First item A, order 0 FY22-048, acceptance of a gift, COA. The Budget and Finance Committee voted 3-0 to recommend at their 2/28/22 meeting. The Finance Committee voted 7-0 to approve at their 3/2/22 meeting. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Is there any other further discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Moving on, item B, Order 0 FY 22-049, transfer order, non-union. The Budget and Finance Committee voted 3-0 to recommend at their 2/28/22 meeting, and the Finance Committee voted 7-0 to approve at their 3/2/22 meeting. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood, Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr.
Souza, yes.
Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
and Mr. George.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Moving on, item C, Order 0 FY 22-050, Town Council Acceptance of Townhouse Preservation Restriction Agreement. This order was not referred to any committee in 14 days has elapsed, therefore may be finally considered this evening. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on, item N, new business. First item A, Order 0 FY 22-053. Question to be placed on the April 23rd, 2022 election warrant. I'll defer to the town manager. Assistant Town Manager, I apologize. Have it.
Thank you, Mr. President. This legislation, as you know, the town manager convened an ad hoc committee a couple of years ago, led by our council president, Mr. Rushton, to review the existing fire headquarters. I believe the town council received a presentation on the fire station feasibility in December. This question, having determined that there is no way for rehabilitation of the current station, the town manager is requesting that the council direct the town clerk to place a question before the voters at our upcoming April election.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion now to keep Order FY 22-053 at the council level.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Council Wood.
I have a question, maybe through you to the town attorney. So later in the agenda, there's an election question.
Yes.
It has similar language, but slightly different for the fire station. So how do we resolve the two differences?
You mean the language in the current order is somewhat different than the language that appears in the later petition? Is that what you're
Yes.
referencing?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we'll probably want to move to amend that so that they match. You guys can accomplish that tonight, or you can of course do that at the special meeting. Just make sure after tonight, we take a peek at that and we make sure everything matches up. And then someone can make a motion to amend, have those match up at your special meeting if that's where this goes next. And everything matches, at that point in time before you vote it. I'm not concerned. But of course you can modify it now or then. Either way, I think they're similar enough.
Attorney Rollins, I've looked at them. I think Bill's concern, I don't see the same thing. It's exact language. When we get there, we can look at it, but the actual line says for the town clerk to hereby direct the following questions, the exact language of the order.
As long as the question matches, I'm not concerned about any of the other language in the order. So
Okay.
as long as the question matches, we're fine.
We'll get
I
it
just want
resolved.
I want the voters to make sure they see the same question that you all have agreed to have placed on the ballot. That's all.
Then a follow-up question. I can see that. I can see that point. So in the order, it talks about the cost of the two fire stations, which is the actual, but in the language of the ballot, it does not. But on the explanation for the ballot, it would have those dollar amounts, correct?
In the explanation portion, not on the portion
Okay.
we're voting on.
All right.
Correct.
That-
Yep.
That's fine. Thank you.
I apologize, Council, when I never have a chance to get back to you. Okay, is there any other discussion? And we are still on to keep it at the council level. Motion to keep it at council level. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend Rule 18 of the council rules and procedures to have the second reading of both the order and petition at the previously called March 18th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, Council Wood.
Question, again, through you to Attorney Rollins. So I think there's charter language with timing. So do we need an emergency preamble to make that happen?
No, I don't think so. The charter language doesn't specify the 14-day time gap. It's actually your rules and procedures. That's why I'm having you guys suspend the rules and procedures. As long as it's 2 readings, I think we're fine. I think everything else is in place.
We'll go forward and pardon me while I reach for my charter.
Good idea.
Any other discussion?
If that were the case, we would vote it as an emergency at the next meeting because we have to put it on the ballot. We have time.
I understand the timing need and that's why.
Yeah, but I don't think the 14-day is a charter rule. I think there's a 2 reading charter rule, but I think the 14-day is a byproduct of the rules and procedures of the town council. But if you find it in the charter, it could be there, but I don't think so. Either way, we're fine.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, item B, order 0 FY 22-054, acceptance of a fire grant. I'll defer to the town assistant town manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. The fire department has been awarded 2 grants from the Executive Office of Public Safety to support their efforts to continue its fire prevention and education programs for Bridgewater students and seniors. Acceptance of this gift will allow us to forward those programs.
Make a motion to send this to the budget and finance committees.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
and Mr. George.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Moving on, item C, 0 FY 22-055, contractual buyout. Defer the assistant town manager.
So the town has had a firefighter who has retired. This measure will allow us to meet our contractual obligations to buy out certain accruals for this individual.
Okay, thank you.
A motion to send to budget and finance committees.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood, and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
That's 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, item D, order 0 FY 22-056, sale of raw milk. I'll defer to Council Souza.
Thank you. Most of the farms in Bridgewater, we all know, have gone. And I was asked by Mr. Hanson if I would submit this, and I went into the state law to see what it was. And I also found that there are other cities and, well, the towns in the state that do it. So it's clearly spelled right out here that all we do is if we approve it, then they have to comply with the state code and certification and everything else, and they will oversee see that there is, because there was some concern about it. Following those rules, there will be no problems. And anything we can do, I believe, to help them earn an income to keep their farms going, I think we should.
Thank you. I would ask now, is there any questions from the council? Council Moore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Maybe through you to Councilor Souza. When I researched this, it looks like there might be implications for other supporting roles that the town needs to make this happen. I don't know if that's the case, but I heard something about a milk inspector. I heard something about maybe some ordinances that talk about the handling and testing of milk, goat milk versus cow milk. Certainly not an area that I know, but I think the question would be, as we sort of move forward with this, and I think it's a great idea, just understanding kind of the full implications to the town would be helpful.
Attorney Rollins. I apologize. Go ahead.
I can't say that I'm an expert on raw milk at this point. So
No, I was.
That's going to be a research issue. So when that gets sent out to committee, obviously, whoever is in charge of the committee can reach out, and we're obviously going to have to do our due diligence on making sure that we're in compliance with any regulation or law that relates to the sale of raw milk. So not something we've ever come across, but there's a first for everything, and we'll deal with it as it comes.
I actually wasn't where I was going, but thank you. I'm looking just looking for where do you think it's most appropriate put into committee?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilor Chase.
I'd like to raise a motion to table this measure.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to table and I have a second. Just any discussion on the table, and Councilor Chase.
Yes, actually, I have concerns about the measure on two bases, really, both procedurally and substantively. Procedurally, the language of this order is faulty, and it's seriously misleading. It speaks to the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources provided certificates of registration to our dairy farms. That is inaccurate. That has not taken place. I've independently confirmed as much with the Department of Agricultural Resources in a conversation I had last Friday with the Director of Animal Health. He, at my request, searched the Commonwealth database to determine whether any farms in Bridgewater have been issued certificates of registration for the purpose of sale of raw milk, and there are none. There are only 28 such farms in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In fact, a certificate of registration, which is what the statute requires for the sale of raw milk, but that would not be available to a farm unless and until, firstly, the municipality actually approved for the town the sale of raw milk, which is what this order intends to accomplish. So that's the procedural basis on which I find this order to be flawed. More substantively, I'm very concerned about the sale of raw milk because obviously raw milk is unpasteurized milk, and both the CDC and the FDA emphatically urge against the consumption of raw milk. Raw milk can contain as many as 10 pathogens, including E. coli, Staphylococcus aureus, Salmonella, and Listeria. There are instances of 133 outbreaks of disease in the United States between 1987 and 2010, according to the FDA. It's illegal to transfer raw milk across state lines in the United States. 20 states simply outlaw the sale of raw milk. Throughout Canada, raw milk is illegal for sale for purposes of consumption. I find there are many reasons for which we should not approve the sale of raw milk in the town of Bridgewater. That's the nature of my objection to the order as it is written.
Okay, so further discussion, Counselor Gallagher.
See, thank you, Mr. President. I certainly respect Counselor Chase's thoughts and research. I do think, though, that we ought to support our farmers in this particular, in their particular request that is sponsored by Counselor Souza. I don't think we really need to table this. I think that if we can send it to appropriate committee, and perhaps economic development is where it should go, I'm not sure. But I do think I'd like to see it move along, you know, and have those issues that you raised, Counselor Chase, worked out in the committee, and then bring it back. If you're just 100% against the sale of it, then that's a separate issue. But it seems like there might be some steps that the farmer, the owner of the farm might have to take if it's approved, getting the license and the like. I do think that we ought to try to do what we can to support the farmer in this case, to be able to sell the raw milk. It could be uncharted waters. I mean, they have a very good business in Bridgewater. They've been in business for a long time. And I don't know what the health benefits are of raw milk. I don't think I've ever had it. I don't know. But I do think there are many things that we consume as humans that are really bad for us, and we just keep eating them. But I do think that I'd like to see it go to a committee, then be stalled here and tabled. I think that your concerns can be addressed in committee. That's just my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Wood.
Thank you. The reason I'm supporting tabling this, my uncle actually was in the milk business. They had a commercial dairy operation up in Lawrence, Brock's Milk. They created milk, they sold milk, and it was a large family business. So I called him on this, and he said raw milk is dangerous. You know, they used to sell raw milk back when he was a kid. Kids would consume it, and they had a lot of problem with people getting sick over raw milk because there was a lack of monitoring, testing, and in general health concerns once the milk moved away from the farm. So you know, the safety factors of homogenization and others that have taken place since then have reduced the risk greatly. If we had a large dairy farm whose business it was to sell milk, who was monitored daily, tested daily, and had all those health monitors that Eric is asking about, it might be a different story. But we don't have that. We have the possibility that people would pick up a couple cows and sell raw milk to their neighbors, and I can't support that at this point because it seems like the dangers are just too big. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor George.
Thank you, Mr. President. Understanding the issues that are at hand, I tend to agree with Mr. Gallagher on a couple measures. One, in committee, to Counselor Chase's point, making sure from my perspective that anyone who's going to sell raw milk has to go through the Mass Department of Agricultural Resource to get the proper certificates if they don't already have it. That would be number one. Number two, I'm not a resident expert on this. I would assume, though, that within the regulations, there needs to be specific language identifying raw milk, putting up maybe cautionary signs or things of that nature. I'd like to know about those. Once those come back to the council, you know, understanding we can address all those, then I think we decide at that point. So I would not be in favor of tabling this motion right now.
And Council Perry.
Thank you. I too would like to see this just be vetted in committee. I think by gathering more information from the State Department of Agriculture and consulting with our own Board of Health here in Bridgewater, I think would be key things to review with the subcommittee, just to properly vet this on out. And in the end, if it's proved that it's not safe to go forward with, then so be it. But I think we should at least go through the process of vetting this out. And I think the Community and Economic Development would be an appropriate committee to do so. So I would be in favor of sending it to committee and not tabling it this time.
Thank you, Council Columbotus. Not sure if he wants to speak or if that's an old hand that was raised, but I'll just say my piece on the motion to table. I would.
Sorry, I would agree. I agree with Dr. Perry. I think this issue shouldn't be dismissed out of hand without first doing due diligence and research and learning the facts on the issue. Mr. Chase cited, I don't know, 160 odd cases in the course of from 86 to 2022. So that's, in 35 years, there have been 160 cases of unsafe use of raw milk, and it seems like a small number. There are, what I've read, there's significant raw milk in terms of resistance to diseases and such. So I think the issue deserves a full hearing, and that it should be sent to committee and not tabled.
Okay. Councilor Chase.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If I could just clarify very briefly about the statistics that I cited from the FDA website. There are 133 outbreaks of disease attributable to raw milk. And let me just go into the detail slightly more than that, which resulted in 2,659 cases of illness, 269 hospitalizations, 3 deaths, 6 stillbirths, and 2 miscarriages. Those are the hard and fast statistics from the FDA. Whatever it is in the council's judgment that we feel is the best approach, I'm happy to follow. But quite frankly, I don't know that any of us can really effectively counter advice from the Centers for Disease Control and the Food and Drug Administration, who both emphatically urge against the consumption of raw milk.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Chase. I think we're just going to go ahead and move now. We've had is it related to it tabling though, Dennis? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to say, this raw milk is not illegal to sell. Each municipality has the authority to establish the ability for a farmer to sell it. Obviously, things need to be searched out, but I do think that we've brought up in this council several times about the great benefits of marijuana, but we know that that's not the case. But I think having something like this that a business is looking to do, we should try to do our due diligence and support this.
Thank you, Councilor Gallagher. And I would just say, I also support Councilor Gallagher, George, and others that we have a business that I feel like this is like a niche market. There is a process to go through to be legally licensed to do this. There's no question that the town needs to be educated on it in order to protect the community. So I have no problem with moving it to a subcommittee to work through that process. So I want to move now the discussion on the tabling. So we have a second. We're going to move for a roll call vote. Right now it's to table the order.
Mr. Columbotus,
Sorry, no.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
No.
Mr. Souza,
No.
Mr. Rushton,
No.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
No.
Mr. Gallagher,
No.
Mr. George.
No.
It's 2 in favor, 7 opposed.
Okay, back to the order. We have a second. We're in discussion. Is there any further discussion on the order?
I'm sorry, are we discussing sending it to Community Economic Development?
So we haven't determined the subcommittee. That's where I was going with Attorney Rollins, trying to determine, but it sounds like through the conversation, we've honed in on Community and Economic Development as a subcommittee to send it to. So entertaining a motion that is the subcommittee. If
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second it.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the subcommittee that it's going to? Okay, seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Looks like he's gone.
All right, that's 8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on, item E, petition P 2022-017, 2022 town election warrant. Defer to the assistant town manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a legislation is a matter of pro forma. The town council must accept and approve the warrant for the annual town election to be held on April 23rd.
Make a motion to approve.
If I could, I would like to entertain a motion to hold this petition at the council level.
So moved.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
I think he's gone.
All
He's
right,
lost connection.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on, I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend Rule 18 of the council rules and procedures and have the second reading of the petition 2022-017 at the previously called March 18th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
and Mr. George.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on, next item, citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens here for citizens' comments? I don't see anybody on the meeting. Oh, actually, I do now. Any citizens for citizens' comments?
Janet's iPad, Janet's
yep.
iPad.
Go ahead.
David Hanson, 665 Pleasant Street, owner of Hanson Farm. Thanks for addressing this. I know it's a complicated issue and there's a lot involved with it, which includes monitoring water quality, water temperature. The animals have to be tested.
That they need to engage the Board of Health.
The milk has to be tested regularly, and equipment as well has to be up to date. So I understand where your concerns are, and it's a long process to get to this point.
But there is regulations.
Thank you.
There is Janet Hanson, 665 Pleasant Street. There are regulations in place to protect for the sale of raw milk, and there's other communities that have raw milk sold, and it's not mass production. It's just going to be sold. He could just do a gallon. It's not a mass production. There are regulations. Farmers drink their raw milk all the time. And I get the concerns, but if there are regulations and we can send information, UMass Ag has all the steps, and the state is in that, and the Board of Health can, there's regulations, so it's not like they're just gonna milk a cow and pass it out. So just keep that in mind, and thank you for not tabling it.
Thank you. Another, I think I had Dr. Hunt with his hand up.
I had, but the only point I was going to make is you have a Board of Health that needs to be engaged and should be part of this discussions. That's all I was going to say.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Do we have any other members of the public for citizens' comments?
I don't see any other hands up.
Okay, moving on to council comments. Councilor George.
No comments tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Gallagher.
Nothing tonight. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
Thank you. Councilor Perry.
Kind of the same mind, nothing really major to report, but wishing everyone a happy St. Patty's and be safe out there.
Thank you. Councilor Chase.
Well, thank you. Just wanted to also say that I wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day this week.
Thank you. Councilor Souza.
Yes, I wish to thank my fellow councilmen for keeping us open and sending it out. Thank you.
Well said. Well said.
Can you hear me?
We got to work in his connection speed.
Frank, I'm going to give you a second and come back to you. Councilor Moore.
No additional comments. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Wood.
Thank you for a quick meeting. I'm going to go back to the high school and do some more CNC routing for the robotics team who's back in competition this weekend. So good luck to them and happy St. Pat's Day to everybody.
Thank you. Councilor Columbotus.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Souza again.
I would just try to thank the council members for keeping this item open, the raw milk item open, and I'll open mine on it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Souza. I have no comments this evening. Moving on to executive session, we have none. Moving on to our last item, adjournment. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, move for a roll call vote. Kimberly, make sure you don't tell Michael that we finished in under an hour. Or say it was all you.
No, actually tell them we finished under an hour and that's the bar we're setting.
That town manager's report that puts us over the top.
Yeah.
I'll tell them.
Deborah's gonna stall on us now.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute.
We made,
I'm reading all
we
the
made
names.
way to go, Deborah. We
1 minute.
may
I'm
not make
so
it.
sorry. All right, Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
and Mr. George. 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Oh, I didn't say anything yet.
Oh.
Come on. Wait, no, yes, yes, yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
See everybody Friday.
Friday for.
All right.
Yes.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Aye.
Bye-bye.